Hello from Cullowhee. I'm Ben Pendry.
And I'm James Hogan, and this is Western Wednesday's January 2024 edition. Ben, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, James. We're back at it.
Oh my
here
gosh.
in Cullowhee.
That's exciting.
It is exciting.
Did you have a good break?
We had a great break. We were here. The family's here. Everybody's here. My in-laws are in town. Thank goodness, because the kids have another week out of school. That will be exciting for all of those amazing public school teachers who have to deal with these kids after 2 weeks of break. But they went to Western Carolina, so you know their quality.
They are. You know the holiday song, the line in the holiday song, and Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. I identify with that now.
Could you do that one more time?
No. Sorry, it's just a one-off. It's just a one-off. We are here, I don't want to say by ourselves, but almost by ourselves, because this campus is missing its students right now. They are wrapping up their holiday breaks. They'll be back next week.
We're excited to have him back. The basketball team is excited to have him back. Our men's basketball team is on a roll right now.
They're on a tear.
We're starting up conference play this week against Citadel, and I know the students are excited to be back. We're at home in action this Saturday, and so by the time you wonderful viewers catch this, we'll hopefully be undefeated in conference play. And make sure you catch the Catamount basketball team, men's and women's.
That'll be fun. And while this is not like a sports update, I can't help but not point out WCU men's basketball knocking off an ACC opponent in Notre Dame and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, an SEC opponent. We've got great wind behind us here. And so we're going to plow right into the Southern Conference, and I hope we take care of some business.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
You had an awesome chance to talk with the amazing Debbie Wright and talk about a wonderful story. Debbie brings just an amazing amount of experience, and we were really excited to honor her with the Professional Achievement Award at Homecoming this past fall. Tell us a little about your conversation with Debbie, James.
It was so much fun. First of all, because we got to sit down with Debbie in Chicago, where she lives, and where she has spent a lot of her career and a lot of her volunteer time as well. Debbie's class of 1977, as you said, she won our Professional Achievement Award back last fall in October of 2023 at Homecoming. Debbie's had a remarkable life when you sit down and look at it, and I can say that I don't think that if Debbie were in the room, she would say, no, I'm just a regular person, you know. She talks about that. She doesn't really necessarily look at herself as maybe a trailblazer or some extraordinary human being, but she was in many ways a trailblazer, and she is an extraordinary human being, and we're really fortunate to have her as an alumna of this institution.
So she graduates from Gaston College. She comes to Western, ends up majoring in biology, molecular biology. And she talks about it being at the forefront of some of the work that was being done in genetics and some of the molecular testing that ended up making her not a shoe-in, but really in the absolute, she would say the right place at the right time for the career that she enters into. And so she comes to Western and then decides on med school, right?
She goes to med school and then switches to law school.
Gets into med school at Wake Forest.
Yep.
And then decides, nope, not med school, law school.
Law school. Yeah, so from Wake Forest to Chapel Hill then to law school. And you had said Gaston College. She didn't go to Gaston College.
Sorry, Gaston High School.
Where she was the valedictorian, the first African-American valedictorian. And this is a theme that I think comes up a lot in these interviews, being in the right place at the right time. And for Debbie, there were so many instances there where there was just a confluence of luck, where you've got this particular skill set in a particular time in a particular place professionally, where those things come together and form an opportunity. And Debbie had the chance to jump And we talked a little bit about what that was like for her in terms of her career transitions and the different opportunities that were offered to her. And some of them, she didn't take. She did not necessarily intend to be in craft in the particular sector that she was in for a long time. And she had a great mentor who kept her there. She had a great mentor, not at craft, but elsewhere, who kept her there. It was a great conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you and with everybody listening. And so let's get to it.
Let's get to it. The groundbreaking, barrier breaking, Debbie Wright.
Well, Debbie Wright, it's such a joy to be sitting here with you, and thank you for joining us for this Western Wednesday.
Well, welcome to Chicago. Welcome to the CSO.
Thank you so much.
And the weather turned out great.
It's absolutely beautiful today here in Chicago, and this is a little bit unusual for Western Wednesday to be out of state. And so we are here at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and I thought you could just, if you would, just start by telling us where are we and what's important about this place to you?
Well, we're in the 8th floor of the Symphony Center. It used to be called just the Orchestra Hall, and they expanded the building to include other meeting rooms. If you go down the hallway, you see the photographs of all of the musicians who play here. The CSO is considered one of the best in the world. Some think it's the best. They are rock stars in Europe. And I regret that a lot of people in Chicago do not get to hear them. They do a lot of outreach. They've gone to churches, and in the summers they play in the Millennium Park. And you can hear their music. They have more Grammys than anybody. But the actual performance you have to hear.
You need to be here.
You need to be here.
You need to feel that. We were looking earlier. There are some programs that are preserved from historic concerts here. Rachmaninoff.
Yes.
George Gershwin. Dvorak.
Yes.
Names that are household names in the classic music space. And they've all played here or soloed here or conducted. I mean, that's quite a legacy.
Well, Rachmaninoff's my favorite.
Oh, my goodness.
It's something about the passion he wrote. And he wrote beautiful music. He was a great pianist to happen to write a few vocal pieces. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And when I used to sing some of his songs, I would most get mesmerized by the music and like, oh, I have to come in someplace, right? My first visit here, Sir George Solti was, his last performance was conducting. And I had a colleague at Kraft who had season tickets. And she had heard that I liked music because it was one of the requirements from going to Kraft that I needed a voice teacher. But that's another conversation. And she asked me to come with her. And I'd been here a couple of months, did not know how to, and at the time I was living in the suburbs, I knew how to get to work and back. That's basically it. And I met her at her house. I followed her in. We parked at her house in Lincoln Park, came to performance. It was wonderful. Now I have to drive home. And she lives in Lincoln Park, where the signs were not quite all there. And plus, in North Carolina, when you're on an interstate, you could see the ramp to it. Well, apparently in Chicago, when they put the interstate through to go through neighborhoods, I was actually driving underneath it. I could see the highway, but couldn't get on it because I had to continue on through a neighborhood. But I don't know this. And this is a time before cell phones. This is at least I didn't have one. This is 1991. It's getting close to midnight. No one knows I'm here other than my colleague, and she probably thinks I'm home. And I asked people how to get back to the Edens, which is the north part of 94. Some people don't know the Edens. And instead of saying, I don't know, they gave you the wrong instructions. Eventually, I found my way close to midnight, and I was horror. I realized I've been running around Chicago, car doors unlocked, purse in the passenger seat of the car, check stuff hanging out of the purse.
You're breaking all the rules.
I'm breaking all the rules. And I remember getting back to work and telling a colleague, and they're like, no, you have to do better than this step. You can't do that here. And I created a new rule. anywhere I went, even if the person was not in Chicago, I needed to let somebody know that I was going to XYZ.
Sure, sure. And have little breadcrumbs that
Yes,
you drop
exactly.
behind you.
So even though Sir George Solti was great, it is tempered by the experience of getting back home.
What a memorable experience, and not to spoil the whole story, but this kind of Lost in Chicago debut for you at the Chicago Symphony is for a person from Eastern North Carolina,
Right.
Someone who sang Rachmaninoff, but has a background in biology and law, and candidly, those are interesting bedfellows. And so, Debbie, you're a graduate of Western, 1977, but I want to go back before that, and I want to just start with you grew up in Eastern North Carolina,
Yes.
in Northampton,
Right. Very rural area.
very rural area, and in the late 60s, early 70s, you made a trip to Cullowhee, which must have been a little bit like going to Mars from Eastern North Carolina.
It was. I've never been. I think at that time, the furthest west I'd been was maybe Statesville. My brother had gone to A&T, so obviously I'd been to Greensboro.
Yeah.
But never to the mountains. And I got there.
And tell us why you went to Cullowhee.
Okay. My high school algebra teacher apparently got some type of papers, some announcement from the National Science Foundation, and they were looking for math students. And he said, well, I'm going to submit your name. You may not get it, but you never know.
Yeah.
And the National Science Foundation was having that particular math class in Cullowhee. Actually, it was the second class they had. I think they had a class the summer before I got there. And they chose 30 students, 20 guys, 10 girls. And I was one of 10. And I remember my father, when we were driving up, 40 was not complete at that time. I think that the merchants in Hickory and places had fought 40 because no one wanted them to bypass all of the stores.
I think actually Statesville roughly was
Statesville was maybe it.
maybe where it ended.
I think it maybe ended
Yeah,
in
and then you picked
Statesville.
up Highway 64.
And it was like a 2-lane highway, and even getting to Cullowhee. In fact, I guess I don't know if my father had gotten directions from a travel agency or something, but he had a map, of course. And he was in the Korean War and he was in intelligence.
I
So
see.
he says he can find his way out of everything but Japan and Korea. That's what he said.
He's got his compass.
Just his compass, which I didn't get, by the way. It's not my thing.
Right.
I didn't get that. And it seemed like it was a long, long trip. Because technically, Northampton County is in that part of, I'm closer to Virginia beaches than I am North Carolina beaches.
Right, yeah.
Norfolk is like an hour and 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
So now, Cullowhee's practically Tennessee, Georgia. Whatever,
Right, you're going from northeast to all the way
Yes.
southwest.
Yes, and it was amazing to see the fog over the mountains. It's like, in fact, the trip to Western, my father had brought my mother's uncle with him. My mother was there too. And he had gone through the mountains sometimes during the war, I'm not quite sure. And he would talk about how you could wash your face in the mountains with the clouds. And it really felt that way.
Oh.
It really felt that way. So I think it made an impression because it was just so different from where I grew up.
Right.
I had sand in my backyard, and that's all I knew. I knew some red clay and sand and some black dirt, but mountains, no. Pine trees, yes. Mountains, no.
So you come to Cullowhee as a school kid,
Yeah,
a grade
I
school
just
kid.
finished my junior year.
You were pointed in the direction by a teacher who thought of you and said, this is the student we need to send for this math experience.
Yes.
You went back to your high school where you graduated as the first African-American valedictorian.
Yes.
What pushed you to be successful academically at your school? What was it that pushed you?
I think it's parents, it was always expected. I can't say there was one event that said, I need to do X, Y, Z. I found out later on from my father that one of my aunts was valedictorian when she was in high school. Of course, it was segregated then. And I spent the first 5 years in a segregated school. But I knew I couldn't come home with bad grades. It was just expected. I didn't think it was anything different about it.
So high expectations.
Yes.
Was there? It sounds like you just had a natural gift for academic success as well. Were you aware of that as a high school student? That you were just good at it?
I guess I was aware, but I also knew that I wouldn't say had to be, but it was expected. I also felt being Black, that it almost had to be perfect to make sure you got the grade that you deserved. And integrating the schools was just a few families that sent their kids, and I think they really wanted to make sure they had people who had support. Now, we didn't have all of the issues that Charlotte had and busing and those types of things, but there are some things there.
Yeah.
Some I've sort of put out of my mind, and one of which I didn't even think about until I was playing golf on the men's golf league at Upjohn. So that's another story we can go down.
Sure. Yeah. So you graduate high school. I'm going to imagine you could have gone to many, many schools, many colleges or universities. North Carolina has some of the most well-regarded historically Black colleges and universities. Of course, Chapel Hill, other schools, but you came back to Western.
And ironically, from the math program, Cornell and Purdue were pursuing everyone. They wanted you to be an engineer, I think.
I see.
Because I think National Science Foundation is really looking for the next set of engineers for the most part. My father was like, figure out where you want to go. We're not spending money all over just to be curious. Right? Because you probably can get in where you want to get to.
Curiosity can get expensive.
Yes. So, and I thought about Western, the experience I had there was that it was the scenery, it was just so different. Also met a few people who were there during the summer. And I felt comfortable. I didn't think about if going to something like Western Carolina would put me at a disadvantage. I never thought that in the things I wanted to do. And neither did I think about coming from a small school that I could compete on a science level. I just thought it would just happen.
It'll just happen.
It would just happen.
Yeah. So you come back to Cullowhee and you find your way into the sciences. And you become a biology major. But you happen to be there at a time when genetics becomes a topic and a class. And talk to me a little bit about how you found your interest there and the professor that you worked with. And
yeah, my advisor was Dr. Paul Wright, no relation. He happened to be the genetics professor. Genetics was generally taught your second year. We were on the quarter system then. I know we were on the semester, we were on the quarter system then. I think it was cellular biology, ecology, I forget what the third thing was. And there were a few science courses that were taught every other year. I really was such a nerd, I'd gone through and realized I had a conflict with something I wanted to take because I was interested in music. And I explained this to my Dr. Wright. And he said, well, maybe we can I think you can handle genetics this year. Let's give it a shot. So I did. I aced it. But he also saw something in me. He allowed me to teach the genetics lab from then on in.
you taught the lab?
I taught the lab.
As an undergraduate?
As an undergraduate,
Oh,
yes.
my gosh.
So,
well, you must have been fantastic at it.
I don't know if I was that, but he, at the time, I took every genetics course that Western had to offer. And molecular genetics was on the rise. Of course, a lot of that was through scientific journals, and Dr. Wright was interested in it, and it piqued my interest. And that's how I got into genetics. I had no idea that it would lead to my career.
Right.
And the role it would play
Sure.
in the career I'm choosing.
Before we get to the career, you mentioned you were taking music classes
Yeah.
at Western. Did you grow up musically inclined? Did you sing? Did you play an instrument? How did you get involved there?
My family's always been musical. A lot of us sang. I sang in the choir. And I think being able to see shows like the Ed Sullivan Show, that gave you a variety of things.
Yeah.
And my voice was always more of a silvery tone, it wasn't natural for me to raise my chest voice a certain level. It would just
Sure.
go to my head.
Yeah.
And my mother knew I could sing. I don't know when I knew I could sing, but my mother did. And the reason I know this is that she had made an agreement with my first grade teacher that I would sing a solo at the PTA meeting. There was a program. And she was getting me to learn all 3 verses of this song. I cannot know why, but I had to. And this is first grade.
Uh-huh.
And it came for the day for the performance. There was a guy in my class who had been pulling my pigtails for days, and I could never get him to stop. And finally, this time, I just took care of it.
You dealt with it.
I dealt with it. My teacher called my mother and said, "Gladys, I wanted to discipline her, but I need her to sing that song tonight."
The whole PTA show is revolving around this song. We'll deal with it tomorrow.
I remember singing, and my grandmother had made me a blue lace dress.
Oh, my goodness.
And I had the Shirley Temple curls. And I did sing it. I think I've only sang that song a couple of times since that time. But yes, I still remember the words, actually.
I'm glad that you mentioned your mother, Gladys. I want to come back to her as well later. There's so many threads here. But I wanted to ask you about the music. Did you ever consider majoring in music or pursuing a performing career?
No, I never did. If I had to step, what I know now, I might have considered it. Mm-hmm. But at my time, vocally, my voice is not quite big enough for an opera stage.
Sure.
Most people look at Leontine Price. I don't have that voice. Mine is similar to Kathleen Battle. Not as pretty, but that type of thing. Now, she's had a career, and maybe companies are used to looking at, will give you an opportunity now. Mm-hmm. But at that time, there was a stereotype of what type of voice it is. But because your voice the size is what the size. You can't really grow a size. And I know this now. I'm very interested in the Ryan Opera Center, the Lyric. I'm on that board. It's actually my favorite board. And I think it's because you get to nurture the top talent. It's sort of, I think of it as a finishing school for opera singers. Right?
Yeah,
because
interesting.
They all most of them have master degrees already.
Sure.
But the program is to give you all the things that you would need to have a successful opera career.
Right.
And it's really thrilling when you know folks who are big on the stage now that you knew when they were there.
Yeah. Our producer for Western Wednesdays here with us, Sam Wallace. We were talking about this yesterday because we're both interested in music. Neither of us, I don't think, would describe ourselves as terribly talented musicians.
Yeah.
But to be able to be part of a group or to be in the proximity of a group
Oh, yes.
where you are exposed to and you just have the privilege of sharing that space is a dynamic and thrilling experience all into itself.
Yeah, I wish more people would come to the symphony and to the Lyric. And I wish we could film there too so you can see how gorgeous that building is.
Yeah.
But it's an opera today, which I'm going to. But yes, it fulfills me.
So you leave Cullowhee, 1977, class of 77, with your biology degree. You go to the Bowman Gray School of Medicine at Chapel Hill. You were going to be a doctor?
Well, Bowman Gray is actually at Wake Forest.
I'm sorry, at Wake Forest. I'm sorry, you go to, thank you. You go to law school at Chapel Hill, right?
Yeah, right.
You start at Bowman Gray at Wake Forest. You were going to be a doctor. Why? What was the thinking there? Did you want to be a physician? Did you want to be a surgeon?
I think it would have been a physician, but if I'd stayed, I probably would have been in the lab looking at it. Law school was just a different way of thinking. Never thought I really would practice it.
Sure.
But coming out of law school, environmental law had become big. The government had a hazardous waste program, and they were actually asking states to do certain things. So now we need a lawyer that could deal with engineers and those types of things. And that's how I got into the North Carolina Department of Justice. My family's not political. I don't have political ties to do that. It's just that they thought, well, maybe this will work. I did hazardous waste at one point. Now, that was difficult in the sense of most of the men are not used to seeing you. I went to consumer protection, which I love, but it's also going through small towns and doing things that people are not too happy about.
Right. And so this is the early 1980s.
Yes.
So you're at the North Carolina Department of Justice, and you're a freshly minted lawyer. Where did you find your confidence to do that kind of work, especially when you know you might be in conflict?
My first vote of confidence came through a group of depositions. It was a hazardous waste case that had been going on for quite some time. What had happened years ago, they misread the water flow in the Cape River, and waste got into groundwater. Some folks. So this case has been going on for years. Passed down, and now it's getting close to a trial, perhaps. At least the depositions are going on. And in 2 weeks, I got sent to Charlotte to participate in these depositions. I was terrified. First of all, you're right out of school. It's not like you had an internship with this. You know the rules. That's about it. And they were talking about a test. And at the time, all of the other lawyers did not have their experts with them. And the test was a negative test, which I knew. A negative test meaning the lower the number, the better off you were. But that's not how they were seeing it at the time. They didn't know how to read it. So that gave me the confidence, at least for that time, that you put the time in, you can do it.
You knew the test. You knew the scientific test.
I knew the signs of it.
Yeah.
I knew the signs of it. So.
Did you ever find an association between the need to present confidently or to present what you knew as a lawyer with the confidence you had to muster to sing?
I think there is a connection. I've always been told that I had a presence. Don't know. I can't tell you how that looks because I don't see me.
Yeah.
And I know that when I would do oral arguments, and sometimes we had to make oral arguments before the Supreme Court, because one of the things we had to do as a member of the Department of Justice is represent the state on criminal appeals. And I had a colleague who had cerebral palsy. He was brilliant, but some judges did not have the patience for him to get his words out. So when he had his cases, I would do the oral argument for him. And one of the judges said, you have presence. And I never thought, hey, maybe I can do this.
I think you do have presence. I believe so. I think I've seen it before too. I think that there's really something to that, and obviously that serves a lawyer well.
Yes.
Particularly the kind of lawyer who does have to argue before the Supreme Court, or who does have to deliver a convincing deposition, or make an argument in front of a jury.
Okay. And I think the science helps too, because I can weed through facts very well. And I follow the rules. When you do a brief, it says the statement of facts should not be slanted. So I don't slant mine. And I think it gives you credibility with the judges when you're going to, when we read a brief, it's what it is.
I'm just telling you what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. And at some point, you look in a classified ad, and you find yourself looking at a job search where they're looking for lawyers with a scientific background. And is this for the Upjohn?
It's Upjohn, yes.
Institute, which is now Pfizer.
Not Pfizer. Right? It went from Upjohn to Pharmacia to Pfizer.
And you read this job description in the classified ads and think,
oh,
okay,
I got a minor in chemistry. I'll send my resume.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Biochem. And so
I don't
you
know
send
if
it
I knew
in.
if I could do it. I'll just send my resume. I had no idea what the job really was. Looking at it, and at the time, Upjohn was in the top 10 of pharmaceutical companies. They all were it was before all the major mergers and was going on. And getting the response I got, I didn't think it would go any further, right? A couple of months later, I got a call for me to come for the interview. Not knowing what the job really entailed, I sat on the plane with my old Morrison and Boyd organic chemistry book, going through reactions, thinking they're going to ask me about these things. Right?
If I have to balance a chemical equation.
Yes, I didn't know. I wasn't sure. And when I get there, after interviewing with a couple of folks, I realized they really were looking for a biotechie. They had one on board. They hired me, then they hired another one after me. And the reason that is that the law had changed. In 1980, when I was in law school, there was a case called Diamond versus Chakrabarty. Diamond was the commissioner of patents. Chakrabarty was the inventor who, I think it was GE, who had invented a way to modify bacteria to eat up oil slicks. It probably did that, but they never used it because they weren't sure if they released these in the environment, would it do cause some other damage.
Sure.
But that was the test case that went up to the Supreme Court. Until that time, they'd said that this natural phenomena was not protectable subject matter, which is that you can't patent gravity,
Right.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
So this was a test case that went up, and I think there probably was some politics as to which case was going to be the best one. And it came down, yes, it is. Now, a lot of pharmaceutical companies had chemists or chemical engineers who may have not taken a lot of biology courses, at least molecular genetics. And I think at that time, they're like, well, maybe you need to get some expertise here. And I just had the right degree at the right time. Now you need a PhD in molecular genetics, even people even look at you, right? But
at the time, you had what it took.
Yeah.
And so you go to Upjohn, and where did that job take you?
Job-wise, is probably my favorite job. One, because it's new. I was also working with some of the best patent minds in the industry, because at the time, the head of the patent department was working on harmonizing the patent laws across the world. Our system, the U.S. system, was different from mostly Europe, whatever. And now we're trying to figure out how we can harmonize those laws so you're not having to play the different rules for different people, right? So that was good. And when I first got to Upjohn, he sent me to, I think I went to Miami for a course on biotechnology. Then I went someplace else. And it was just unreal that I could go to nice places and learn something and not worry about budget, those types of things. Because if you're a government employee, just like your school, you're on a
Right.
I think when I was it $27 a day, and that was everything.
That's really interesting. So you go from the North Carolina Department of Justice
To that,
state
yeah.
government job.
And I had a hard time making that transition mentally in my mind.
Right. Oh, they must have thought you were something like, here's my receipt for my, my candy bar, which I ate for lunch and dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's like, here's the jet and take it to Florida and learn about this.
Yes.
So you enter the private sector. Different mindset. They take you all over the place. And how long were you with Upjohn?
I was there 2.5 years. And I'd come to Chicago on one of the vice presidents couldn't make it to this seminar dinner. He said, let's send Debbie. And I was excited because I wanted to go shopping. Right, I go
This
to
is
Chicago.
fantastic,
And I flew in, actually. There was a flight that came in. And it was a dinner seminar at one of the law firms. And I met someone who was at Kraft. And he was talking about some invention they had. Of course, I had a little bit of pharmaceutical arrogance, like, oh, please, When I got back, a headhunter called and said, you were in Chicago recently. Like, how would you know this? And they were like, well, you met so-and-so at Kraft, which I didn't remember. When I saw its face, I remembered it, right? And they're looking for a patent lawyer they think would fit in, because at that time it was 91. In '89, Philip Morris had bought Kraft. They'd already owned General Foods, which had a large department in New York. And they're going to merge these two, and they're putting the main office in, at the time, it's Glenview. And I wasn't interested. Like, I'm not coming. And a good friend who probably was like a mentor at Upjohn had said, we're such a small community, at least give them the courtesy of going. So I went, was not impressed, came back, because I had all this exciting technology at my desk, right? And then the head of the department at Kraft called. He said, "You don't get it." I said, "I'm a physicist by training. The other guy here is an electrical engineer. We need somebody to manage all this biotech and chemistry." So my friend at Upjohn is saying, "Debbie, if they're going to let you do this at this time in your career," because I've been a lawyer for 5, 6, 7 years, patent lawyer for 2. You can't stay here. You have to go.
You have to take this job.
You have to take this job. So I did. And I got there. People were nice. And, but they really didn't have biotechnology. They had the expertise there. I was not very happy about that.
Yeah.
So I called Sid and said, they really don't have biotechnology here. And he said to me, "You have to stay at least 2 years. You can't appear to be jumping." Good
That's
advice.
good career advice.
Good advice. I listened. 2 years rolls around. Of course, I called Sid again. I said, 2 years are up. And I said, "Merck is calling, but I don't want to live on Chemical Row." He said, "Unless it's your ideal job, you need to stay because you need to vest." I missed vesting at Upjohn by 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
I now know what that means. I did not know it at that time.
You didn't think about it, right?
Didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Wasn't even on the radar screen, as they say. Vesting at Kraft was 5 years. Mm-hmm. Of course, 5 years rolling around, I call Sid again, and I can feel him rolling his eyes over the telephone, right? And I said, "Well, I don't know if I have passion for this. And if I want to get back in pharma, I need to do it now. I can't hang out in food much longer." And I remember him asking me, he said, "Do they treat you well? Did they leave you alone? Did they pay you well?" And I couldn't say no to any of those. And he said, "Passion is overrated," and he hung up the phone.
Passion is overrated.
But I think he meant you do have passion, but I think we tend to romanticize what passion is.
That's so true. That is so true.
So I give Sid all the credit in the world for my career.
Yeah.
But for him, I would not have stayed. I would not have been head of the department for 4 or 5 years. I would not have created a whole new licensing structure for Kraft. So I give him credence to everything that I do.
And that kind of mentorship obviously kept you on course. And I'm so glad also, by the way, that you mentioned Kraft. I think you say Kraft, your average American says macaroni and cheese, but it's General Foods. It
was a global conglomerate when I was there. We had some of the best chocolate in Europe.
Yeah,
We
right.
bought this French cookie company. I think I almost got sick off of that. When I got to Kraft, we owned was it Siltas and Breyers. It was Breyers' 75th anniversary or something like that, and they had the Breyers truck on the lawn, and I had a couple ice cream sundaes and couldn't figure out why I was not feeling so well at the end of the day. There was Oscar Mayer. I had my biggest case was an Oscar Mayer case, and Madison, and it was winter. It was like -20, and I remember going to dinner, and I asked for iced tea, and they said, "That's a seasonal drink." And I was like, "Since when?"
I'm from North Carolina. It's a
when.
year-round drink where I'm from.
But this particular case, they said, "Deb, if you win this case, we will give you a ride on the Wienermobile." And I did. And they brought the Wienermobile down to Chicago.
Did they really?
It was lunchtime on a Friday. I'm there, my outside counsel. I'm sitting like waving like a beauty queen. as we circled downtown for several hours.
And of course, like everybody gets excited about the Wienermobile. Like it's like seeing a celebrity. You've seen,
Yes.
and you've written this. This is certainly a Western Wednesday first for first alumna that I've ever interviewed who has ridden in the Wienermobile.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have other Western. If you are a Western grad and you've ridden in the Wienermobile, please email me jhogan@wc.edu. I want to start a list here. Debbie Wright, probably the first, and what a great story behind that too. So you said 1991. You're here at Kraft. At first, you're unsure. You're thinking maybe I made a mistake to leave pharmaceutical industry life and work. You make your way. You find success. You're vested. You're growing. They treat you well. You have a good job. You have time to share your passion for the arts here. You get involved with the symphony. You get involved with the lyric opera. What a full life.
Yeah, I also do some community work. Always giving back. I'm with Metropolitan Family Services, which is the largest social services agency in the city. Actually, it was here during the big fire. It's about 160 years old.
Right.
And I'm only there because most people on that board were presidents and CEOs, and I took the place of a president and didn't have time to come downtown. And I live down here, so well, Debbie, maybe you should do that.
Yeah.
And the Links organization, we do a lot of things in the African American community. And I think I get a lot of that from my father, who was really big in the Masons, and he believed in taking care of widows and orphans, that type of thing.
At any point, were you aware that you were a trailblazer, that you were breaking boundaries?
I don't think I ever saw it that way until I meet other female patent lawyers, perhaps. You may say that. Obviously, the valedictorian, yes, that was easy, doesn't it? No.
Sure.
But as for how people saw me in my industry, no. I didn't see it as blazing a trail at the time. Only when I got around younger patent lawyers who would say things like that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I've remained busy and remain in the LINN, which is a IP association in, only because I think people need to see you.
Yeah.
And understand that you can do a lot of things.
And that kind of leads into my next question. And it's kind of a two-part question. First of all, imagine you could climb into the DeLorean, the time machine, and go back to 1973 when young Debbie Wright steps back onto the Cullowhee campus for the second time, now as a student. What would you tell the young version of yourself at the cusp of this incredible career? What advice would you give her?
Know that your family has prepared you well. My father would say, when I first got my first job out of law school, you got to pay your housing, your transportation. Then you need to pay yourself, meaning save something. It creates muscle memory for you to start putting things away because you need to look at the future, too. So I'm glad I followed his advice in that regard because I understand, like as companies give 401ks, that some companies have had to have a mandatory opt-out because people were not opting in.
They weren't opting in, right.
I just found that unbelievable. So for students out there, when you get your job, follow my father's advice. You got to have a place to stay. You got to get to work, but put something away for yourself.
That's excellent advice. And kind of the second part of that, you mentioned Sid, your mentor, who really kind of, I love it. Passion is overrated. And he hangs up the phone. Did you look for, or were you able to find opportunities in your life where you were able to be the mentor and to help guide someone who was behind you?
I think there have been a few. And I think mentoring is not as, I need to find a mentor. Sometimes it just happens. It's very organic. And you need different people at different stages in your life. Because at Kraft, I had a great job and a great experience, but not everything was always okay. There was one of my colleagues, I cried on his desk a lot of days when you're dealing with someone who didn't want to listen to you or whatever. So I try to be that sounding board for different people too. But my advice to people is to look for a mentor, but understand you need a broad you need to cast your net wide because you need different things, and you need it from maybe male, female, black, white. It should not be, I have to have one that looks like this. You need a variety to get you through.
This was something else that Sam and I were talking about. So often we hear stories that if you could identify a theme among them, you happen to be in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. Do you look at your life that way as kind of a lot of serendipity?
Yes and no. Was it Louis Pasteur that said chance prefers a prepared mind or something along those lines? Mm-hmm. So when opportunity comes, you have to be prepared. Yeah. You can't be like, it's just not luck. The door opens and you don't have the qualifications, not willing to go get them. What good does it do?
As I've heard said before, being in the right place in the right time is one thing, but God gave you two legs. You have to get up and walk to that place, right?
Yeah, it reminded me of my first year in law school. I actually did a Christmas concert right before exams at the church. But if you don't know it then, you're not going to ever know it, okay? And what I remember the minister was saying to the students, he says, I'll pray for you, but you can't bring God an empty head. I think so. That's great advice.
That's that's a great piece of wisdom, and you've shared a lot of them. I want to ask you about one more thing, and that is you mentioned back in the first grade, you took care of some business, and the principal had to call your mom, Gladys. And in 2018, you established the Henry F. and Gladys P. Wright Scholarship at Western Carolina. And it's a scholarship for a student in math or science, and with preference for an African-American female student.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about your decision to honor your parents and what it means to you to have that scholarship at WCU?
My parents really have directed my entire life. Without them, I don't think I would be where I'm at. They were also very encouraging. They were never limiting. I never heard anything, women don't belong in science or anything like that. You can always do what you want to do. And as far as the scholarship, I do give a lot of credit to a former chancellor, Belcher, who thought of the idea of making these individual scholarships. Because I had donated to Western, but at the time I had not thought about a scholarship, at least presently, maybe something in the future when I'm dead and gone, but not present. And he was really bending my ear about it. And I really wanted to get it done while he was alive. So we did that, and I decided to name it after my parents to honor them for everything all of the love and compassion they had for me, as well as they always had my back. And my dad has given me great advice all along. I never thought how good it's been. Just looking back at it, I'm like, that was good advice.
And have you been able to watch the students who have received that scholarship yet? Have you had a chance to meet them?
I've met one of them who was a nursing student, I think. She's from Asheville. I think she was a first generation. I saw a note that was my second one that I'm aware of. The first one, I forgot what she did. But it was good to see someone in person. I'd come back for the scholarship dinner. But, COVID interrupted a lot of that. So I'm hoping that I'll get back to campus for the next one.
Right. Debbie, I also want to just say congratulations. This past fall, you were in Cullowhee to receive from Chancellor Brown the Distinguished Professional Achievement Award. And it was an honor to share a little time with you then in Cullowhee when you accepted that. What does it mean to you to be acknowledged like that by your alma mater?
I am floored by it. I'm still not over it. I regret that my family wasn't able to come. They had planned to, but circumstances with a few medical issues didn't seem the most prudent way because there's a lot of walking. I forgot how big Western was, even if you just go from the parking lot and going across the football field. And it was surreal. I saw some folks I'd seen in a long time. And I guess I was surprised when I got the letter because I never saw what I did as being special. It's just that we just did.
Well, Debbie, hearing all of these stories that you've shared with us, I think you are special. I think that you're very special. We're so proud of you and so grateful to be able to count you among the many Catamount alumni who've done extraordinary things. And so I'm so glad for the time that we got to spend today. Thank you for inviting us up here to Chicago to talk to you, and thank you for all you've done for our students, and thank you for what you continue to do to mentor and encourage, to be part of the arts here, and to do all the work that for a short time ran through Cullowhee, North Carolina as you were a student. So
but that short time helped put me on a great journey. So thank you.
Oh, James, what an amazing conversation with Debbie Wright. Thank you for bringing us that. Y'all had a blast together.
That was a lot of fun. And again, I can't get over how fun it was to be there at the Chicago Symphony in their building. It was a really cool space. And so we just had a lot of fun. And we were just sitting here chuckling over that line, passion is overrated. I mean, can you imagine just saying that, say that to a young person today and see kind of what the response is. What do you get?
You talk about I'm not going to touch that. You talk about a lucky group, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Lyric Opera of Chicago. How lucky are they to have somebody the caliber of Debbie Wright as a volunteer?
Absolutely.
We know a little bit of that. Debbie has been a longtime volunteer for Western Carolina University, most recently serving on our foundation board, and we've been so fortunate to have her expertise. But thrilled that y'all were able to go up and visit with Debbie in Chicago.
And she's also a just fantastic donor, and we talked about the Henry and Gladys Wright Endowed Scholarship that she has here, and so the job is easy sometimes when you get to sit across from people like Debbie Wright. So it's great fun. Next time you get to go.
It's like sitting across from someone like James Hogan.
Oh my
folks.
gosh.
I mean, the job just makes itself, and it does engender quite a bit of passion when you get to sit across from somebody like James.
Passion is overrated.
What else do we have coming up, James?
Hey, I got to tell you, Stacy Miller is on her way soon. She will be. We just wrapped up. By the time you're listening to this, we've just wrapped up a great event in Charlotte for alumni. We've got a watch party in Atlanta that we're doing. They're going to watch a men's basketball game on TV. But February, Ben, is I Love WCU month. I don't know if you know that.
We've been celebrating WCU month here for the last 7 years, I think. It's become a really neat tradition that we celebrate here on campus and online and across the viewing area for WCU. And so we have folks that met and started their relationships at Western Carolina University. We have a chance for our alumni to talk about why they love Western Carolina. Our students, we get them involved. It's a really great time to celebrate not only Black History Month, but also I Love WCU month.
And I think one of the cool things about it, what's really emerged this month is an opportunity for Catamounts to give back, whether that's to their communities or to other causes that they care about. And that's through the Weekend of Service. We are holding that February 16th through 18th this year. Weekend of Service is just an opportunity for alumni to help out, whether that's, we're going to put together, and you'll see this at alumni.wcu.edu. We'll have a list of service opportunities that alumni can engage with all over North Carolina. I think we've got some in the Northeast. We've got some really cool stuff planned. So check that out, alumni.wcu.edu, Weekend of Service in February. And, I think the other thing, too, is while you do it, put on your Western T-shirt, wear your WCU cap. Sam Wallace, over the Christmas break, was down in Florida, and he's walking around Walt Disney World and you see somebody wearing a WC. Sam, did you ever figure out who it was?
No idea.
No idea. But you did wave to them.
I gotta go. I said go Cats, and they got very excited.
Sam said, "Go Cats." See, that's just it. Like, put the hat on, walk around, go help out somewhere, and people will see you and they'll wave to you and say, "Go Cats."
I'm thrilled. This weekend of service is a new tradition that's starting this year, right? And so,
Well, we did it last year. It was kind of a field test.
it was a little low key then.
It was a little lower key, but
Yeah.
we're really excited this year.
As James says, we're flipping all the switches this year.
Yes.
And we're telling everybody to be a part of the weekend of service. That's February 16th through the 18th. If you're going to be around Cullowhee, the best thing that you can do that weekend is come out for our service projects and then catch the home opener for our WCU Cats with Bats. The baseball team is
yeah.
home versus Iona on the 16th, 17th, and 18th here in Cullowhee, Hennon Stadium, Childress Field. So
And it might snow.
it very well could snow, so you might want to bring a cap or your toboggan, as we call it down here. Bring a sled.
I mean, last year on opening day, I think that there were legitimate snow flurries. It was cold. I was out there, but I get
It's
excited.
going to be cold.
I love baseball so much.
Me too.
The other thing I want to make sure to plug: if you are in Florida, if you were that catamount at Disney that saw Sam and got excited when he said "Go Cats," we are doing an Orlando area alumni event on February 10th. Lisa and David Hill, who are great catamounts, are hosting us once again for at Southern Hill Farms, and there will be you'll have a chance to be out there on the farm, and we're really excited. Matt Stillwell, class of 1998, is going to perform. So we're going to cap off the day with a performance by great country musician Matt Stillwell, and that should be a great time. Like, I might drive to Florida for that.
You should just go to Florida for those blueberries that Lisa and David have.
They're really good.
That's worthwhile right there, just going and grabbing some blueberries.
February 10th, 2024. More as well on alumni.wcu.edu. Well, we've done it again. We've put out a Western Wednesday, by golly, next month.
Through sheer force of will of James Hogan and Sam Wallace, another Western Wednesday here coming to you, sharing some of the amazing stories. Great job, James. Great job,
my
Sam.
gosh. Hey, I just want to plug this. Next month, February's Western Wednesday, we are talking to another Alumni Award winner, and that is Brenda Gorsuch. Incredible journalist or journalism teacher and yearbook advisor, just Hall of Fame level educator. And she's going to talk to us about journalism and First Amendment and civics, and I can't wait to share that episode with you.
You talk about bringing the passion.
Yes.
Brenda Gorsuch bringing the passion for civics education, and we are so happy that she's one of us, that she's a catamount, and you're going to love that conversation as well.
It's good stuff. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, James.